guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with a very exciting video. I haven't been updating this video for quite a while. It's been a year and a half since I last posted my palette collection. I was originally planning to do another updated version in January this year, but time just got away from me and I had too many introductions and stuff going up in January. So I thought I would wait until the midpoint of the year, which in a way is lucky because I've had some more palettes come into my collection. Not too many. I think I only added 2 palettes this year, so not too much. But I am excited to share with you those 2 palettes. Well, not just those 2, but all the palettes in my collection. So that's what this video is going to be. I won't ramble on too much in this introduction because I will have a lot of footage of my palettes in this video. I'm doing both like an overview of what the palette looks like, so you can see all the juicy pans and dips and everything like that, but also I will do swatches of every single palette so you can see what the swatches look like. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this. I love watching palette collections. I love being nosy like that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this one too. But before I jump into the first palette, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So first up here we have my current Panda palette. This is the Anastasia Soft Glam palette. As you can see, this palette does look a little bit different than the original palette. I have used up a couple of shades and it also contains some Franken shadows. So I have taken some of the shades that are left and I just made some new shades to give myself some variety. So it does of course look a little bit different, but it's a beautiful neutral palette and I do still love it. But ultimately, hopefully at the end of the year, this palette will be gone and completed from my collection. But yeah, you can see the swatches here. It is a beautiful color story, and yeah, using those Franken shades make it a little bit easier for me to reach for compared to how the palette was before with just those deep shades left. Next up, we have another Anastasia palette. This here is the Norvina palette, the original Norvina. I absolutely love this color story. It is still one of my favorite palettes to this day. Once I have finished up the Soft Glam palette, this is going to be one of the oldest palettes in my collection, but it still performs really well, and it is, again, like I said, still a favorite. I just love these kind of rosier tones, and it has some beautiful shimmer formulas as well as mattes. This is the swatches right here, so again you can see the rosier undertones. It does still have a lot of warmth to it. This came out when warm tones were all the rage, so you can see that throughout this palette too. But yeah, I do absolutely love this color story, like I said, so that is the second palette. The third palette is also from Anastasia. I'm doing these in brand order. This here is the Sultry palette. This is discontinued, so it's not around anymore. But it is more of a cool tone leaning palette. It still has a couple of warmer shades, but overall it is definitely more of a cool tone palette. It is quite well loved in my collection. It's not an absolute favorite though. I probably wouldn't say this is one that I reach for that often, but it is still a beautiful palette, and yeah, it's just another take on a neutral palette, but you can see the swatches here with the beautiful shimmers and mattes. This palette here is actually a palette that I kind of made myself. So this is a mix between the Anastasia Subculture palette as well as the Jackie Aina palette. So this palette is one that I kind of decided to make because I had some shades in either of the palettes that I didn't really enjoy reaching for, so I wanted to combine them and keep just my favorite shades, and it created this beautiful autumnal color story. You can see it in the swatches here just how stunning this kind of palette is. I absolutely love it. I love the colors in here, and of course I do because again I just kept my favorite shades from those 2 palettes. So yeah, unfortunately you can't get this palette as it is. I do still love it nonetheless, so that is this palette right here. Then we have the Amrisi palette. This is a palette that I got gifted from my partner a couple of years ago. I think this is the first palette he actually ever got me, which is very exciting. This is not my favorite Anastasia palette either. It does have some absolutely beautiful shades, but it does also have some repetition, and the pressed glitters in here just aren't the best. But overall it is a beautiful color story, and on paper it is one that I should really like because it does have those rosy undertones and it's a little bit brighter than some of the other Anastasia palettes that I have. But also, as you can see throughout the swatches, it does have that repetition. Some shades are quite similar to each other, so because of that I feel like this isn't like my favorite color story. Moving on to the next brand, we have ColourPop. And first up out of my ColourPop palettes, we have the Going Coconuts. So this is, of course, another neutral palette. It's a 9-pan palette. I don't have too many 9-pan palettes left from ColourPop. So this one has 3 shimmers and the rest are mattes, or well, one is a sequin shade as well. But I do like this palette for more of a neutral type of look. It's not, I wouldn't say this is warm toned nor cool tone leaning. It's somewhere in the middle. And the tones are, well, maybe not that unique, but it's just like a nice kind of camel undertone. And I do really like this palette. It's nothing too special. It's not a favorite or anything, but it is definitely usable and it is like a staple to have in my collection because it is a beautiful neutral palette. Up next though we have one of my favorite palettes again. So this is of course from ColourPop again, and this is the Child palette, which was one of the Mandalorian palettes. This is just such a beautiful color story. I love the greens in here. I love the undertone of them. They are a little bit kind of minty, sagey, kind of undertoned, but still not too cool toned. Some of them are warmer, some of them are cooler, and this is just a perfection in the palette. I just love this palette. Every single look that I make with it, I absolutely adore. And you can also see that the palette is very well loved. This is probably one I'm going to hold on to for a long time. It is just so stunning. So that is the next palette. Then we have the Sweet Talk palette, also from ColourPop. This is also a bit of an older palette in my collection. I have actually switched out 2 of the shades, which are the 2 pressed glitters. I replaced them with similar shimmer shades, just because I like having my pressed glitters in a separate palette. But yeah, this is a really warm toned, kind of corally palette, and it is super stunning. It is, I have kept it around because of the undertone, because I don't have those shades too many times in my collection. It is quite bright, it is quite fun. Is it like the best formula? No, but I do keep it around again for that color story because it is a bit more unique to my collection. Next up we have my newest ColourPop palette. I got this one from my friend Martina. She declared it for my collection and she handed it to me. This is the At Foresight palette from ColourPop in collaboration with Raw Beauty Christie. It is a really beautiful, kind of rich color story. It has mainly mattes. It only has 2 shimmers, and it is just a really stunning palette. These mattes are very rich, like I said, and more like a jewel toned undertone. So it's a bit of a, I would say, autumnal type of rainbow palette, and I do really like it. The quality in here is really good too. I feel like ColourPop isn't maybe the best formula in my collection, but this palette really does have a nice formula, especially for those mattes. The next brand we're moving on to is Natasha Nona, and this here is my first Natasha Nona palette I ever picked up, which is the Metropolis palette. This one is discontinued. It's been discontinued for a long time, and I absolutely love this palette. I wish Natasha Nona would do more palettes in this format because I think this was such a fun palette. It is quite warm toned, and it's not like my favorite Natasha Nona palette just because of like the formula and the shades in here. There is a little bit of repetition again, a lot of similar looking shades as you can see in the swatches right here, but it is a beautiful palette nevertheless, and I do really cherish it in my collection, so I probably wouldn't get rid of it anytime soon or maybe ever. But again, it's not my favorite Natasha Nona palette. However, the next palette that we have is one of my favorites, and that is the gold palette right here. And it is 100% my favorite Natasha Nona palette. I just think this is the best formula she's ever released, even to this day, even though the palette is quite a few years old now. It is just the best. This palette is unfortunately also discontinued, which is such a shame. She did really release this type of color story-ish with the golden palette, but I haven't tried that palette myself. But looking at the swatches and what other people have shown, it just isn't the same. And I'm probably always going to forever cherish this palette, and I'm going to use it until it completely doesn't work anymore because I just think it's such a beautiful color story, and hopefully again the formula will last for years to come. Here is the Natasha Biva palette. So this is another larger size palette from her. This is another one that I got handed down from my friend Martina. I'm so grateful. This is such a beautiful palette again. It is one that I kind of consider more of a everyday neutral matte palette. It does have free shimmers, but I mainly have it for the mattes because yeah, that's like what the majority of the palette is. And it also gives you such a nice variety of colors if you want to just do a neutral type of look for those mattes. And I love pairing this one with my indie shimmers because again, the shimmers in this palette, they're there, but they're just not the type of shimmers that I love reaching for. I usually like something slightly more impactful, so that's why this is such a perfect palette for me to pair with my indie shimmers. You can pair it with neutral shimmers or with more colorful shimmers, and again, you have those different undertones to work with. Let's move on to the midi sizes. This is the first midi size I ever picked up. This is the Sunrise palette. It is again a really nice color story, and Natasha is really good at making color stories, and they're quite unique but also very fun. So this one is of course more of a sunset sunrise type of color story, very red toned, very just warm and cozy. This is a really nice palette. It probably isn't the best formula she had ever released, but I do still love it, and it is very unique in the undertones in here, which is why I love it so much. And yeah, it's just a beautiful palette, and I love having it in my collection and playing with, especially in summer. Next up, we have the Natasha Love palette. This is a really nice color story, but unfortunately, the formula just isn't the best. This is probably the worst Natasha palette that I've ever tried, which sounds not very exciting, but I do keep it around because of the color story. I do love these, again, rosier tones. I mentioned that earlier in this video, and I think it's just such a fun color story. It's not one that I tend to reach for very often because one, the formula isn't the best, and the color story does kind of throw me off, even though when I look at the individual shades I absolutely adore them. So yeah, not a top rated palette, but I just enjoy it. This palette right here is one that I absolutely adore though. This is the bronze palette. It's very warm toned, very kind of one note. It does have some repetitive shades, which isn't ideal, and you cannot see that a lot with Natasha Denona palettes, unfortunately. But it's just something about this palette that I absolutely adore. I love these warm, rich type of shades, and whenever I want to go for a bit of a more intense, warm eyeshadow look, I reach for this palette. I just love these shades, and I've mentioned that so many times on my channel. There's just something about them. I know when you look at the swatches right here, they are just like warm toned shadows. But again, something about the undertones in here I just absolutely adore. So it is definitely a palette that I rate very highly in my collection. Next up, we have the Sendo palette, which is another one that I got handed down to me from my friend. This is not a palette that I was interested in originally. There was just something about the color story that I wasn't sure about, and I thought, I have these tones in my collection already. The kind of more coralish side is quite similar to the Sweet Talk palette, actually, which I already showed you. But when she asked if I wanted to buy this from her, I said yes, because she, gave me a really good offer as well, a good price. So I'm very grateful for that. But the more I play with this palette, the more I like it. I think it's just a really fun one, and the quality in here is really nice too. When you look at these swatches right here, I feel like the green tones and the more corally tones just work so well together, and it's definitely a palette that has surprised me. So I'm very grateful now that I have it in my collection. Next up, we have the Yokai palette, which was a gift from a friend. I got this one for my birthday, and this is one that I do really love. I absolutely love green eyeshadows. I haven't been reaching for them as much recently, but a year or so ago, I was, I died for these type of shades, and this is just such a beautiful, unique undertone. I just love this palette, and this one has Natasha Denona more kind of newer shimmer formula, which is so much better than her old formula. They use more kind of shimmery, sparkly. As you can see here in the swatches, they just stand out more. So it is a really beautiful palette, and I just love these kind of warm greens. They are right up my alley, and if I do reach for green shades, these are the type of greens that I love reaching for. This here is my newest Natasha palette. This is the My Dream palette. This one was sent to me from my subscriber, which I'm so grateful for. I mentioned that a couple of times. But this is a beautiful, beautiful color story. It is one that Natasha kind of curated for herself because this was kind of her dream palette. And it is a little bit smokier than what I normally reach for, but I just think the shades in here are so stunning. I love the transition shades that are in here, and the shimmers are so stunning. Personally for me, I probably wouldn't reach for like all of the deeper shades, like the black and the deep brown. The two first shades in the palette aren't really what I reach for like on a daily basis, but the rest of the palette is right up my alley. Again, you have those kind of pinkier shades, but also those warm shades which I like. So yeah, I do really enjoy this palette. Next up, we are moving away from the 15 pound palettes, and this here is the Glam Face palette. So this one has 5 shades of eyeshadow and then 2 face like palette shades. It is a beautiful palette, and I absolutely love this one for like an everyday look. If I just need an easy palette to bring with me for like a simple look and some beautiful cheap products, this is the palette that I reach for. The eyeshadow shades are just perfect for me. These are the exact tones that I like to reach for every day, and the shimmers are again that slightly more impactful shimmer formula, which is beautiful. And I know this is eyeshadow palette kind of collection, but the cheek products in here are super, super stunning too. Moving on to the mini palettes from Tesona, we have the mini retro first. This is a really unique color story, and I think this is still unique to this day. When it first came out, it was such a beautiful color story, and it still is. I haven't really seen anything else like this. It has these kind of greenish undertone grays as well as some beautiful warm tone pinks, and I love both of those undertones. I love them together, and I think this palette is again so unique. It is user 5 pan, but you can do surprisingly a lot with this palette, and because of that reason I do really rate it quite high. This is the mini gold palette, which actually is a lot more green than gold, in my opinion. It does have that kind of goldish shimmer in the middle, but it does still have that green undertone to it. I do have pan on every single shade in here, so it does have a lot of use and love. Again, I don't reach for greens as much as I used to, but I do still love this palette, and I think it's a really, really stunning one. It's not one of my favorite Natura mini palettes though, and I think that's mainly just because I don't reach for these tones the most at the moment, but I still think the formula is really nice. So if you like these type of shades, I do definitely recommend it. This right here is the Mini Biba palette, and this is probably the one that I always said is my least favorite mini palette from Natasha Biva. I just feel like I don't know, the shimmer, it only has one shimmer, which is quite versatile, but it still doesn't give the most variety. And the mattes are really stunning, but I think they are a little bit too similar to each other, especially for use of 5 pan palette. The second shade and the fifth shade in the palette, even though they look quite different in the pans, they are very, very similar in the swatches, as you can see. So yeah, not my favorite, not because I don't like these tones, but just because I feel like they could have been done more with this 5 pan palette. This here is the mini nude palette, a good staple. It has 3 shimmers and 2 mattes. The 2 mattes are very different from each other. It has like a lighter matte and a deeper matte, and then 3 different type of shimmers. So it does have a lot more variety than some of the other palettes, or like, you know, especially the mini Biba palette, which I just showed you. So this is a really nice staple, but I don't reach for it too much because I don't use this as a travel palette, and I just don't think to reach for it, but I definitely could incorporate this one as like an everyday palette because these are the type of shades that I reach for on every day. But again, I just forget about it, so I don't reach for it that often. This is again one of my newer palettes. It's actually one that I got as a gift with purchase. This is the Mini Love palette, which actually has 3 repeat shades from the Love palette. So it is a little bit repetitive for me to have in my color story or in my collection because I already have these shades in the Love palette. But it's a nice little trio, and I do love these rosy tones as I mentioned previously. So I have held on to it for now, but it might be one that I declutter or pan in the future. So those were all my Tesona palettes. Next up we have Pat McGrath. This here is the first Pat McGrath palette I ever got, which is the Utopian Dreams. This is one that I got gifted for my birthday from my boyfriend, and I absolutely love this palette. It is still my favorite Pat McGrath palette. I just again love these rosier tones. The matte they don't go too deep, which is something that I value a lot because I don't go too deep with my looks anymore. And the special shades in this palette are absolutely exquisite. They are just so stunning. You can see here in the swatches, especially that 5th shade and the 10th shade. So those two like most sparkly shades are just to die for. I absolutely love this color story and this palette. So it's one that I cherish very highly, and it's definitely one of my favorite palettes in my collection. Next up is the bronze palette. This is one that I'm trying to show more love. I do love this palette already, but I don't like it as much as I thought when I first picked it up. I thought this was going to be my ultimate, favorite palette, like for every day, for like these kind of more neutral looks, but it's a little bit too smoky for me. And the shimmer shades does have a little bit more of a colorful undertone, especially those special shades. The bronzier rose gold shimmer though is one of my absolute favorites in my whole collection. I love that one. So it is still a palette that I do enjoy, just not as much as I thought. This here is the Divine Rose 1 palette. This is another one of her more neutral color stories. This one is definitely more cool tone leaning, and again, because of that, I don't reach for it as much as I probably should. Again, I do have one of my favorite shades in this palette though, which is that 10th shade. It is just such a stunning, beautiful, sparkly topper shade, which you will see soon in these swatches. But other than that, I just don't reach for these kind of taupey undertoned shades that much, which is why I don't reach for as much as I can. But I do like that it has those again rosier undertones, but since the palette overall is a bit more kind of taupey, yeah, it's just not like what I reach for. This right here is the Divine Rose 1 palette. This is the Sublime palette, and this is also more of a cool tone palette. So similarly to the last one, I don't reach for it as much as I would like. This one is also taupey, kind of undertoned, but this one is lacking those kind of rosier undertones. So it is very different from the last one. It does also have more blues for the special shades. It does have that gold that all of Pat McGrath palettes have. But as you can see here in the swatches, it is definitely more cool toned overall. So it is a beautiful palette if you do like those undertones, but again, it's not what that I reach for too often. My least favorite Pat McGrath palette is probably this one right here, which is the Divine Rose 2 palette. It is a nice color story, but first up, the special shades in here just aren't as sparkly as I would like them to be. They are still really nice, but again, just not up to the same quality as some of the other Pat McGrath palettes. And on top of that, the shades in here are just a little bit too bright for what I like. And very kind of pink and corally leaning, which are technically kind of my type of color store, which is one of the reasons why I still have this palette in my collection. I was lucky enough to get this from one of my friends again, so I didn't purchase it full price or anything, but yeah, it's just not my favorite color story, and again, it is my least favorite Pat McGrath palette, but that is Divine Rose 2. Next up is the Moonlit Seduction palette. This here is one that, again, that I wasn't planning to maybe pick up, but I'm really grateful that I got it to my collection. This is one that I got from my friend again, so it is another palette that I'm very grateful to have in my collection. But I really love this palette. It is one that I rate quite highly, and I'm surprised by that because again, it was a palette that I wasn't interested in originally. It does have that newer Pat McGrath kind of special formula, not the baked one, but more the creamier type of shades, which still isn't my absolute favorite, but I feel like these shades are very sparkly and very impactful, which is ultimately what I'm looking for in these kind of shimmer shades. So I do like it, and I think it's a beautiful color story, so I'm happy to have it in my collection. This here is another palette that I was gifted, and this one was sent for me from one of my subscribers again. This is the Midnight Sun palette, and this is one that is definitely more, for me, autumnal. It does have those kind of warm, rich kind of shades. It has some greens. It does also have those special shades, of course, and this has a repeat shade. The last shade in the palette is the same that I talked about in another palette. I think it's the Divine Rose 1 palette. But yeah, I really like this palette. I love the looks that I created with this palette, and it is just a really, really nice one. But for me, again, personally, it is more of an autumnal palette. So those were all of my McGrath palettes. Next brand we have is Huda Beauty. This is the Mercury Retrograde palette, which is one of the first palettes that I picked up from her. It was very raved about, and I do think it's a beautiful color story, but I don't love this palette as much as some other people do. I don't know, whenever I do make looks with it, I do like the looks, but I don't know, I never really had that initial like fondness of this palette that so many people rave about. But looking at the swatches, looking at the palette, it is something that I feel like is right up my alley because it is a bit more of a pastel, kind of lighter tones. It has some brighter shades, some more neutral shades, so it is a really nice, like versatile palette. It's just not one that I reach for very often. This here though is one of my favorite palettes. This is my ultimate cool tone type of palette. This is the Rose Quartz palette, again from Huda Beauty. I think this color story is just so good. If you are, again, similar to me and you love pinkier undertones, you're absolutely gonna love this one. I also just want to commend all of the shimmer shades in this palette. Well, not all of them, but majority of the shimmer shades in this palette are just so impactful and so sparkly, and also shifty, especially for a mainstream palette. I think Huda like outdid herself with this palette. I haven't tried anything of her newer palettes since this one, just because I'm trying not to buy too many palettes. But if this was like a switch for her, I would be intrigued to try those palettes because yeah, the shimmers in here are just absolutely stunning. Then we have the Nude Light Obsessions. This is one of her 9 pans. This is one that I really like. Again, it has those rosier undertones. It is very light again, which is something that I really quite like in palettes because I don't like going too deep with my looks anymore. This is one that I decided to pick up because I just loved, again, the rosier undertones in this palette. It does have some warmer tones too though, but it's just a really nice everyday type of palette. So even though this palette isn't for everyone, it is one that I love reaching for on the everyday. This palette right here looks very empty, and that is because it is. This is originally the Gold Obsessions palette, but I have panned majority of this palette. It was my pan up palette 2 years ago, where I finished all but 3 shades. I had the 3 mattes left, and I have since then slowly been working through them, and I only have this dark brown left. So not much of a palette, but since it is still in the palette and still in my inventory as a palette, I wanted to include it even though I only have this one shade left. This is from Charlotte Tilbury, so we are moving away from Huda Beauty. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Filter Quad. I got this one as a free gift with purchase, and it's a really stunning palette. I don't reach for it too often because I don't reach for quads, and this will create like a very easy kind of everyday look. It does have 1 matte, 2 kind of more standard shimmers, and more of a topper shade. So it is everything I need for like a simple throw-on look. But unfortunately, again, I don't reach for I don't make those looks that often, mainly because of my panning. But I feel like if I wanted just a simple look, this one would be perfect. So that's why I still hold on to it. Next up we have Beauty Bay, and this here is the Wilderness palette. This is another more autumnal palette for me. I always say this is more kind of like my muted rainbow palette, I would say. This is a palette that I really like, and it does bring a lot of color into my collection. Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful color story, and it's a shame that Beauty Bay discontinues a lot of their palettes. But it's a nice formula, and especially the shimmers are just so sparkly. The mattes perform really well too, so I'm very happy to have this one in my collection again. It does kind of give that rainbow aspect into my collection. Then right here we have the Love Notes palette, which is more my type of palette. And again, it's not because I don't like the Wilderness. It's just because, again, I love these rosier tones more. This is, again, a very pastel palette. It doesn't go too deep. It does have, again, sound like a broken record. It has those pinkier kind of undertones to it, those romantic type of undertones. And yeah, I just love this palette a lot. As you can see, the shimmers are again very, very sparkly and very impactful, which is again something that I adore. So this is the palette that I really like. I know again it's not for everyone, but for me, I do really rate it quite highly. Next brand we have is Calos, and this is the Club Nebula palette. This was in collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist. It has been around, well, it isn't around anymore, it's discontinued, but this one was released quite a few years ago. I tried to get this one on initial release actually, but I missed out, and it was such a devastating night. I got up in the middle of the night to pick it up, and it sold out before I had time to check out, and I was devastated. But luckily they re-released, and I managed to get it into my collection. It is a beautiful color story, and it is, a really, really nice formula. The mattes in here are just very like potent and stunning, and the shimmers are really nice too. So yeah, a nice palette to have. This is the Sashimi City palette, which is one of the futurism palettes from Kaleidos. I again love this color story. It's just something about the undertones in here that I really like. They're a bit more, again, kind of muted down, I would say. And the shimmers are kind of my perfect shimmers. We have like a pink to gold duochrome, multichrome type of shades, which is one of my favorites. And then you also have a very sparkly, goldeny, yellowy type of shade, which is another one that I really like. And again, the mattes don't go too deep, so it's one that I reach for quite often. Next up we have Odins Eye, and first up we have my first ever Odins Eye palette with collaboration with the next one. I picked them up at the same time. This is the Red Dragon palette in collaboration with Judy. It is a really nice palette, and I used to say this was me in a palette. Would I say that now? Probably not. It's a little bit too like warm tone and green leaning, which again used to be the shades that I reached for all the time. However, I do lean more towards like rosy undertones nowadays, which I have mentioned. But I still really like this palette, and I think it's a really beautiful one to have in my collection, but I don't reach for it as much as I would like to. Next up we have the Elva palette, which is the second palette that I picked up originally. This is definitely more of my type of color story now. Looking at it now, it looks quite cool tone, but I think it's also part of the packaging, because this one is definitely more warm tone than you originally would think. But looking at the shades here, you can see it does again have those pinky undertones which I absolutely adore, and the shimmers are just very sparkly and scattery kind of shades, which is something that I really like. I think this palette gets a bad rep, but I do really like it still, so I'm happy to have it in my collection. This is the Odins Eye Christmas Eve palette. It's one of the Christmas releases, which is absolutely stunning. Originally, I didn't like. I liked this color story, but I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I do, because when I did 3 looks with this palette, I absolutely love them. They were some of my favorite palettes to reach for in my series that I did last year. It just gives so much variety. You have some warmer shades, some cooler shades. The shimmers are just, just amazing. As you can see, there's not really any duds for the shimmers. And same with the mattes, they just perform very, very well. And yeah, I just love this palette. It surprised me a lot, but it did get my creativity going. And I definitely recommend it if they ever release it. Then here is the Merry Christmas palette, again released at the same time as the Christmas Eve palette. This is one that I thought originally was going to be my favorite out of the two, but it's not. It does have those warmer tones, those greens, and I still really like it. And again, the shimmers in here are just amazing. But I do definitely prefer the Christmas Eve palette. It's just a bit more special, I would say. But as you can see in the swatches, it is a really stunning palette nevertheless. And again, you can do a lot of different things with this palette. You can do more neutral looks, you can do green looks, red looks. You can, of course, mix and match, and again, be very creative with these colors. Then we have the Christmas releases from the year after. I actually picked all 4 of these up in a bundle. This is the Snow Dream palette, which is a really beautiful kind of sagey kind of green, and then some, I guess, browns and some reds, of course, as well. It's a really beautiful color story, and I really like this one too. The quality isn't as good as the other 2 Christmas palettes which I just talked about, but the color story is definitely something that I absolutely adore. And yeah, it's a nice palette. I'm definitely happy to have it in my collection, but it's one that I probably don't reach for as much as I should. So I do need to make an effort to pull out these palettes more. Then last for the Christmas palettes we have Hey Reindeer, which is another one that I really like, and the color story is quite up my alley. I especially like those pink tones on the first row, and as well as like the pink duochromes, the iridescent, and that pink brighter shade. That like the pink shade on the third row is actually one of my favorite shades in my collection. It goes from a pink to a bright kind of yellowy orange, very very stunning. But yeah, it's a beautiful color story, and looking at the swatches right here, those pinks and yellows together are so so stunning. I don't reach for the cool tones or like the bottom half of this palette as much, but I do still think it's a beautiful palette, and it does inspire me like all of these Christmas palettes do. Then we have the Hella palette, which is another palette that I was kindly gifted from one of my subscribers. Very, very grateful for it. I again love these warm tone greens, which is why I was interested in this palette originally. And I especially like them mixed with pinks, which is why I coveted this palette so much. It is also filled with some beautiful shimmer shades. It does have some duochromes and multichrome type of shades. And not as many kind of sparkly shades as some of their newer palettes. I would say the top half of the palettes are more kind of standard shimmers, which are still very nice, but yeah, I would prefer if they were a little bit more sparkly. The next brand we have is Sydney Grace, and this is the Tiny Marvels palette, another top favorite palette in my collection. This was in collaboration with Mel Thompson, and I just think they did such an amazing job with this palette. The undertones of all of the kind of brighter shades are somewhat very wearable. So do you have the colorful, green, purple, coral, but they are somewhat more muted and wearable. So I really do like that about this palette. And it's also mixed with some beautiful neutrals, beautiful shimmers, and the Sydney Grace formula is just amazing, and this is definitely the best of the best. So definitely recommend this palette if you can get it, and if you ever thought about picking this one up, 100% get it because it is just such a good palette. Moving on with Sydney Grace, we have the California Coast palette. This one's one that I got as a free gift with purchase for the Christmas in July sale, but I really love this palette. It is a bit more of a rosier type of nude undertone again. It definitely is more cool toned. It does run quite deep. I think this is the light version of this palette, but it still does run quite deep, and the shimmers are very deep in general. The only shimmer is a little bit lighter that I would reach for more of an everyday shade is that first shimmer. So it's not one that I reach for all the time, but whenever I do reach for it, I do really like the looks that I make with this palette. Then we have the Mountain Trail palette, which is another one that I got free gift with purchase during the Christmas in July sale, same year as the California Coast palette. Again, I love these type of greens. There was a time when I used to say that these greens or this palette was a neutral palette for me because I feel like they used like this type of green is just more of a neutral shade for me. Maybe it's just because it's so earthy. Again, I don't reach for these shades as much as I used to, but I do still appreciate them, and I do really like this palette nevertheless. And it's definitely one that I'm going to try to pull out more this autumn. This right here is the Viseart Paris Edit palette. It's a beautiful, beautiful palette again. This is one that I try to reach for more when I travel. Not as a whole, but I take these palettes, like these shades out, to put in my magnetic palette. So I get a lot of use of this palette that way. I did play around with this one a lot this year through my product level up, where I had to hit 3 pans, as you can see, which I did. And I did fall in love with this palette again. I just think it's a beautiful formula, beautiful color story, and again it is those rosier tones which I do like. And yeah, a beautiful palette. I was again gifted this one from my friend, which again I'm so grateful for, and I'm glad that I got to try the Viseart formula. Next up we have Rowan, and this here is the 75 degrees quad. This is the more kind of warm tone quad, and again I was gifted this one from my friend. Super grateful. I do really like these palettes. They are very pretty. Such a unique formula too. I don't reach for them as much as I would like to, just because I have so many special shades in my collection, but these are definitely very nice, and again a very unique formula, and I do want to pull this palette out more. Same with the next one. So I don't know this palette too much yet, but I do want to play around with it more. This here is the Eyes on Me quad, so another quad from Rowan. This one does have a matte though, which makes it a little bit more versatile, and this is also more of a warm toned palette, but it does have more of a rusty type of undertone. I did get this one as a free gift with purchase from Huda Beauty, so I didn't pick this one up either, but I'm grateful to have it in my collection, just the same as the other one. And yeah, very versatile palette, and again, since it does have that matte, you could technically create a full look with it, but I don't again reach for it as much as I would like. Next up we have Cleona, and I do absolutely adore Cleona. I have so many of their singles, almost all of them. I did used to have all of their stained glass singles, but I have kind of slacked off a little bit picking them up, but I do have a couple of palettes from them. So this here is the Deep Sea Treasures palette, which contains of 8 special shades. All of them are multichromes, and they are very special. I really love this palette and the shades in here. I don't reach for this one as like a standalone palette, but I do love these as like shades for other looks, and just dipping into this one for specific shades, and it does have some very unique undertones and unique shades, so I'm grateful to have it in my collection. Then the newest palette that I have from Cleona is this one right here, which is the white quad from the advent calendar box last year. I think it's 12 Days of Christmas. I haven't really played around with this one too much because I only picked this one up this year. They did release these out of sight of the advent calendar earlier this spring, so I did pick this one up. It has 4 shades which are absolutely stunning. They are just very kind of light, colorful, but still a bit more wearable, and the iridescent shade in here is absolutely stunning. It's very sparkly and very multicolored glitters. But yeah, love this palette, but I haven't used it too much, so I don't have a strong opinion on it yet. Then we've come to my very final palette, which is another one that I was gifted from one of my subscribers, which again I'm very grateful for. This is the Simply Posh Northern Lights palette, which has 12 absolutely stunning special type of shades. Some of these shades are a bit more kind of standout shimmers, some of them are very sparkly, some of them are sheerer, some of them are more opaque. So you have a lot of different formulas in here, and overall it does lean quite purpley, blue, and green. But again, since these are all multichromes, they all have different shifts. So you do have some warmer kind of shifts to some of these shades, and it is just very versatile. Again, I wouldn't reach for this palette as like a standalone palette, but in correlation with other looks for sure. But unfortunately, I haven't had time to play with it too much because it is so new in my collection. But I'm definitely going to make an effort to do so this year. So there you go, guys, that was all of the palettes in my collection. I do have quite an extensive collection, but I did actually declutter a couple of palettes last year too. So if you watched my last version of this video compared to now, did you spot any differences? Did you spot which palettes were kind of missing or decluttered, and also which ones were new? Let me know in the comments, and otherwise of course you can go back and watch that if you want, but some of it is going to be a bit repetitive, so yeah, I completely understand if you don't want to. But that is going to be it for today. I really hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys!